Hi folks, as you may know, the UNM Learn system has a testing feature that can be used to administer tests or quizzes to your students. In this video, we'll take a look at the test feature. You should note that testing is quite robust in Learn. It has a lot of possible settings and quite a wide variety of question types. We will not review all possible settings in this video. We'll be focusing on the ones you're most likely to use. If you have questions about other features or other capabilities of testing, you can attend one of the Open Labs, sponsored by the UNM Center for Digital Learning. The schedule for Open Labs is available on the Center for Digital Learning page of the UNM site, which you can find at cdl.unm.edu. In this first video on creating tests and quizzes, you will learn how to create a test and how to build several types of questions, including multiple choice, multiple answer, true, false, and calculated numeric questions. When we get to the second video, you'll see how to configure your test options. Note that even though we're going to be covering the most common features and settings, creating tests is a big topic. We would recommend that you view this video more than once while you're creating your first quiz or test. We would also recommend that you stop at the midway point after we cover creating questions and before we look at test settings, and practice the creating questions part before moving on to test settings. So here we are in our sample course. The first thing we want to do is go to a page where we would like to put the test. And so I'm going to go to a blank page, course information, and this is the space where I'm going to put a test. And once I put the test here, that's where the students would find it. To start the process of creating a test, we go up to Assessments and then select Test. Notice that we're selecting test whether we're creating a quiz or a test. In the UNM Learn system, quizzes are a kind of test, so any type of quiz or test you create, you'll be using this test feature. So on the Create Test screen, I go down to Create, and I click that. So that takes us to the test information page, and this is where we're going to give our test a name. I'm going to click here, and this is going to be Quiz 1. I could also leave a description of the test if I wanted to or needed to, if there was something unusual about it and it wasn't self-explanatory. So that would go here in this text field. But I'm going to click Submit now, which will start the process of creating this test. As soon as I click Submit, it takes us to the test canvas, and this is where we actually build the test. So primarily you'll be using this Create Question menu, and you'll be selecting the question type that you want to create. There is also Reuse Question. If you've created a test before and you have it in here, you would be able to reuse questions from a test that you've previously created. And then there's also Upload Questions. So this is a somewhat advanced feature that you can use if you've used a test generator of some kind. You can upload what you've created within a test generator. This actually represents one of the easier ways of creating a test. So if you want to explore using a test generator, you can talk to the folks at the Center for Digital Learning, maybe go to one of the Open Labs, and we can work with you on how to use a test generator and how to upload those questions. In this case, though, we're going to use the approach that is used most commonly for creating tests, and that's this Create Question menu. So you'll notice that there's all kinds of questions you can create. And we're going to take a look at a few of those. So I think as a starting point, let's take a look at multiple choice questions. So I'm going to select multiple choice. So here we are on the Create Multiple Choice Question page. I could give the question a title if I wanted to. This is a little bit of an oddity in the Learn system. Questions don't really have to have a title. If you put something here, students don't see it when they see the question. It is a way for you to kind of add a marker to your questions if you want to be able to quickly identify them. But most people don't use the question title. They just go to the question text itself and start writing their question. So I'm going to write my question. And once I have a question, since this is a multiple choice, I can scroll down. And there's an answer space where I can give possible answers. So I'm going to start with answer 1. So that's one possible answer. I'm going to go to answer 2. Then I'm going to go to answer 3. And that's the correct answer. Then I'm going to go to answer 4. So I have 4 possible answers. I could actually do fewer than 4 if I wanted to. I could remove a possible answer. Or I can have more than 4 possible answers. I can go up to the top of the answer section and select a higher number than 4. But in this case, we're going to do 4 possible answers. We also need to indicate which one is correct. Notice this correct answer column, and it's selected for answer 1. So by default, answer 1 is correct. I know that it's not the correct answer in this case, so I need to scroll down, find the correct answer, and click the little radio button next to it. So now I've indicated what answer is correct. I can now submit my question. And now we have, if we scroll down, we can see we have a multiple choice question. We can see the question text, and we can see possible answers and which one is indicated as correct. So we've created a multiple choice question. I'm going to go up and get ready to create the second question. Go up to the Create Question menu. Notice that along with multiple choice, there's also one that's called multiple answer. If you have a question that's multiple choice, but more than one of the answer options is correct, you can use the multiple answer type. And the only difference with that type of question is that when you create it, you'll be allowed to select more than one of the possible answers as the correct answer. So that's a multiple answer question type. There's also true, false. Those are really easy to create. I'm going to select that one. So I'm going to put my question here. So there we have a question that could be true or false. And then I'm going to scroll down. And under answers, by default, it's indicating that this statement is true. And it does happen to be true. If it were false, I could switch it to false, but we only need to keep it on true. Notice that we also have space for feedback. If you wanted to give students feedback for questions in this test, you could put that feedback here. They would see this feedback after the test is graded. When they go in to look at their grade, they could also look at feedback. So this is an option if you'd like to use it. I'm going to go ahead and click Submit to create this question. And now we have 2 questions, one multiple choice, one true, false. So let's try another type of question. I'm going to scroll back up, go to Create Question. And one that can be particularly useful is Calculated Numeric. I'm going to select that one. This is for the type of question that has a numeric answer. So it's very useful in math, science, economics, business, any kinds of material where you would pose a question to the students and expect a specific number as the answer. I'm actually going to use it for a U.S. history question, though, continuing with the theme. So here we go. So now I've posed my question. I can scroll down and indicate what the correct answer would be. If there were a range of possible correct answers, I could indicate a number here, but in this case, the U.S. did enter the war in a particular year, so I don't need the answer range. And as with the other question types, we can leave feedback if we want to. I'm not going to in this case. I'm just going to click Submit. So now we have 3 types of questions. I'm going to go back up to the top here and open the Create Question menu. We're not going to create all these question types, but I'd like to point out the kinds of questions that you can create. The actual steps involved are usually pretty similar to the ones that we've already created, but those other kinds of questions include short answer. If you were looking for a short text answer to a question. If you're looking for a longer text answer, you can give them an essay question. And then you have file response questions. Those can be really useful if you want your students to do something that involves creating a file and submitting that file. So if they had to create a spreadsheet or a slide presentation or a graphic of some kind, you could have them submit that as a file with a file response question. You also have fill in the blank or fill in multiple blanks. You're probably familiar with those kinds of questions. And something that can be quite useful are hotspot questions. If you want to show the students a screen, and if the answer to the question that you're posing involves identifying a spot on that screen, you can do that with a hotspot question. You would then indicate what the correct area of the screen is that the student is supposed to click, and students would get credit if they clicked that correct area. And then you have matching questions. You're probably familiar with that type. And there are a few others that you're probably less familiar with, like ordering. You can have students place steps in a process in an order. If you have questions about how to create other question types, feel free to attend an open lab and work with the folks in the Center for Digital Learning. You can find the schedule for those open labs at cdl.unm.edu. So once we have all our questions created, we would want to scroll down and click OK. And that actually circles us back to a screen that we've seen before, the Create Test screen. Only now we see that Quiz 1 has been created, and we're ready to submit to finish the process of creating that quiz. So I'm going to click Submit. When we click Submit, it takes us to the Test Options page, and that's where you can do all kinds of things with your test in terms of how you're going to release it to students, when the due date's going to be, and various other features. We're going to take a look at these settings in the next video in this series, part 2 of creating tests and quizzes. In this video, you've seen how to create the questions for your test. In the second and final one, you'll see how to set your test options so your test is delivered to students the way you want it to be. It's a good idea to practice creating some test questions before moving on to that second video. You can also attend an open lab for help with creating your tests. And you can see the schedule for open labs on the Center for Digital Learning page, which you can find at cdl.unm.edu. Thank you for watching this video. You can check out other videos in this series by going to the UNM Center for Digital Learning channel on YouTube. Thanks.